there is a way.
Hi everyone and aloha. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Civil Cafe, our Earth Day edition. I'll tell you a little bit about Civil Beat. Civil Beat is an investigative website, the largest in Hawaii, dedicated to public affairs and investigative journalism. And we like to put these things together once a month. Civil Cafe, we like to invite our readers in, give them access to different folks to ask questions that they feel is important to their lives. And today, we're actually talking about bicycling. I can talk a little bit. We've had 3 of these before. This is our first time here at Fresh Cafe, so we'd like to thank them. For anyone who likes to have a drink, please go in the back. It is actually hosted drinks, but please give donations. And please take care of your bartender back there. And other house cleaning notes, remember to pick up your Hawaii Perks card back there from Heidi in the Civil Beach shirt. And I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, the bike shop. But first of all, let me introduce our, well, let's give Mel from the bike shop a little time.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Fresh Cafe on Earth Day. I'm happy that Civil Beat is hosting this talk about cycling as an alternative mode of transportation. And I thank Mike Webb for allowing me the opportunity to become the sponsor of this event. And our goal is to increase ridership, whether it be for recreation or transportation. It's important to have safe cycling routes for cyclists to share with other road users. To gain respect of other road users, we cyclists have to look at our own road manners by being visible, predictable, riding safely, and obeying traffic laws. And I thank you and enjoy the evening.
Thank you so much, Mel, for helping this make this become possible. I thought about hosting the Civil Cafe because when Sophie Koch, our reporter here, when she wrote the story about the city's bike plans, I saw that it gained a lot of traction, so to speak, among Honolulu's bikers. I feel like this is a problem, a long-standing problem that a lot of you have been dealing with for a long time. So, you know, I'm glad to be having this over here, and I'll quickly turn it over to our host and our guests. This is reporter Sophie Koch, Civil Beat. This is Mike Formby, Director of Transportation Services. And this is Bobby Evans, standing in for Chad Taniguchi. Chad is a little late, but Bobby is very well spoken on the issues as well. So we'll introduce Chad when he gets here, but for now, here's Bobby. So Sophie, take it away.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for everyone for coming out. This is the 44th anniversary of Earth Day, and I'm so glad that you guys were able to join us today. We're going to be talking about Oahu's bike culture and how to change it. You know, the island seems to defy logic in many ways, in that it seems like the perfect environment for biking. We have year-round beautiful weather. We have a culture that really supports outdoor activities, yet it seems that there's very few bikers on the road, and a lot of bikers tell me that they're actually afraid to ride their bikes on Oahu's streets, which have, hey Chad, which has some of the worst congestion in the country. So I just wanted to start off with Mike and Chad. How did we get this way? How did we develop such an intense car culture that seems to shun the biker?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I'm not sure that I have the answer. I've been here 27 years, and I've always biked, but I definitely have always felt that Honolulu is vehicular-centric. And I'm not sure of the cause for that, but I know that when the mayor took office in January of 2013, he made it very clear that he wanted to take the bike plan up a notch. So, you know, we came in and the bike plan was published in August of 2012. So we inherited this document. It's a really good plan. If you don't have it, you can get it online or you can ask us for a hard copy. But we inherited this plan, and although it talks about protected bike lanes, for the most part, it talks more about bike paths and bike lanes and not protected bike lanes on the street, which is what the mayor said he wanted to transition to. So take the bike plan up a notch and try to change the mindset and the thinking of the transiting, you know, the public, and get them to understand the streets are not just for cars, that they're for bikes as well, pedestrians on the sidewalks, but definitely bikes on the streets. And so that's the goal, and I think you've all heard us talk about some bold steps we want to take in 2014, and it's really not just about starting the first protected bike lane or cycle track, it's also about letting people know that we view things differently, and that the bikes belong to both cars and cyclists. So I don't know the reason we're this way, but we hope to change it.
And Chad, what do you think? I mean, you've been a huge advocate for biking on Oahu for a number of years now. Do you have any sense of why we have such a car culture here? And have you seen any evolution over the years in trying to make it more accommodating toward bikers?
I think cars got cheaper and more people were able to afford them, so more people use them. And it got to the point where people go, okay, well, I'm going to drive. And then the more that happened, then I guess the more demand there was for car-dominated streets. But I think that's really changing. We were at a meeting in Aiea the other night by Pearl Ridge, and I take this crowd as being one more interested in bicycling, but that crowd was just regular people from Aiea Pearl Ridge, which is really car-dominated. And the question that there are 50 people there, 2 caught the bus every day, 3 walked or biked, and 45 drove. But the question was, how many of you at the end of every week wish you could have driven more? And really there was 0, no hands went up. And then how many of you at the end of the week wished you could have walked or biked more? And almost everyone's hands went up. So whatever happened to get us here, I think there's a groundswell of people wanting to be active, wanting to save the environment, wanting to save money, and wanting to bike safely. And that's the hard part. Many people are afraid that if they try, that they're going to get hurt. And that's why what Mayor Caldwell, Mike Formby, and the city is doing is so great, because it recognizes that that's what we want to do and puts resources and vision toward reaching that.
And going back to the mayor's plan, how hard is it going to be? I know we've talked about this in the past, but given the way that our roads have already been built and infrastructure has been created, how difficult is it going to be to actually convert the city and the metropolitan area into roads that actually accommodate bikers? I mean, obviously there's the repaving plan that's in the works, and that is sort of working synergistically with this. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the road. There are some roads like King Street that are very wide, and it's very easy for us to go in, and through a combination of traffic calming efforts, a desire to slow down the speed of the traffic, take away one lane of travel and turn it into a cycle track. I think it's easy to do that. But we have other streets where you'll note that the width of the street changes while you're going down it, like Baratania and Waialae. And it's very difficult to put in a dedicated bike lane or a protected bike lane. So we have to take it street by street. And what we do is we have engineers and we have technicians, and they sit down and they look at what kind of network they can reasonably create in the shortest period of time. One that's functional, that will get the bikers from where they want to go, like from downtown to the university, or university to downtown, or into Waikiki. And then we take the path of least resistance. And that's what we're trying to do, is look at the roads that are easiest for us to make these bold changes now, and then we'll tackle the tougher ones later. So Chad and I have had many conversations from the day that I started back in January of 2013 about Waialae, because they were never happy with the treatment that we gave to Waialae. And I understand that, and if I was in Chad's shoes and head of HBL, I would have taken the same position. But we had to balance, as the Department of Transportation Services, we had to balance the vehicle operators with the bicyclists in a street that is of varying widths, and it's not a perfect solution. So King Street is the perfect solution. I mean, we can absolutely put a dedicated cycle track on King Street and do that in the near term. And so the goal is to have that in place by the end of this year.
And And can you just explain what a protected bike lane is exactly?
Yeah, so a protected bike lane or a cycle track is one that separates the cyclist from the motor vehicles. And there's many different ways to do that. When the mayor and I went to Chicago, Mayor Rahm Emanuel had put in, I think, 25 miles of protected bike lanes in his first year in office. And he did it by separating the protected bike lanes with the candlesticks, or what we call the plastic bollards, which we can basically glue down. But typically you want to do something a little bit more permanent. So whether it's a cement planter with a tree in it so that you actually green the roadway, or whether it's a curb of some sort, an asphalt curb, you want to put something that physically separates the cyclist from the motorist so that everybody knows this portion of the road is reserved for cyclists.
I think it's way more possible to do protected bike lanes and bike lanes than the city and their engineers think. So I know Mike is really progressive and the mayor is really progressive, but it can be done on all the streets that we have. And the greatest inspiration I got recently from that is a guy named Michael Moulet. He was a nationally known consultant, and he just took the job as the chief engineer on Kauai for Public Works. And then he was at the sustainability conference the other day, and he showed slides where they converted two-way streets to one-way street, only 2 lanes, so one way in one direction, and then bike lane and a multi-use path. He had a 28-foot path, 24-foot road, 2 ways. He made 18 feet the 2-way for cars. So most lanes are 10 feet, right? So 10 is 20 already. He threw that aside. He said, it's a country road. We're going to do 18 feet. Cars can go both directions. All they have to do when they pass each other is go slow. And then that leaves 6 feet for multi-use path. So I think people like Michael are going to open eyes to show that it is possible everywhere. Now, what I know Mike and some people are concerned about is, what about the public? What about the residents who live there? What about the drivers? Aren't they going to push back if we're too strong on that? And that's why we need everybody here to talk to their family and their friends, and really to say that we are our own worst enemy. We could have the best bicycling city in the world because we beat everybody on weather and climate. We could be the best bicycling city in the world. All we have to do is change our thinking so that car transportation doesn't have to be the fastest. Make room so that there's equal choice for people to walk, people to bike, people to skateboard, and choose the mode, right? That's equality. And really, that's our only holdback. Because I know my guys would like to do it, but council members are elected, the mayor is elected, they're going to listen to the people. So if people object too much, then they have to slow down. So I think that's where we come in. We've got to talk about the health, the money, the environmental benefits of walking more, biking more, and driving less. And that way, these solutions become easy.
And Mike, have you, especially with the King Street, the protected bike lane, and all the other bike lanes you guys are trying to plan, have you had any sort of pushback that Chad's talking about? I mean, are businesses worried about this? Are drivers worried that this is going to create more congestion on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do hear from both sides, and I agree with Chad, but I do believe also there's balance, and I think it's probably possible to do things on Kauai that you can't do on Oahu as quickly. I mean, I think that's just the reality. And my feeling is that I want to push our engineers to do things as quickly as possible, but I don't want to get us in a situation where we have a lawsuit, where somebody challenges us and says, you didn't do an EA or an environmental assessment, or an EIS. And that's the potential. So if you read the articles, and we read them all the time, every time there's a biking article from the mainland where one of the municipalities converted a major street, took away a lane of travel and put it into a cycle track, there are communities that don't appreciate that, business communities sometimes, drivers, and they come back, and depending upon their financial abilities, they'll file litigation. And then you're tied up for, a year or two and doing nothing. So I sort of feel like there's a balance. You try to find a way to do things as quickly as possible, to be progressive, but maybe to take baby steps and get things done. Change attitudes, because a lot of it is about attitudes. A lot is it about drivers who still don't believe they have to share the road with bicyclists. I think if you bike, and most of you probably do, you know those drivers. They're out there. They don't think you have a right to be on the road. And so it's not just about putting in a bike lane. We could do that tomorrow. We could have the Department of Facility Maintenance put in a bike lane tomorrow. But it's about changing attitudes in a way that's respectful and responsible so that people accept it. And they know where we're going, and that's what the mayor and I want to do. We want to do it in a way that's bold, progressive, but at the same time doesn't get us into litigation and then we get nothing done.
And the good thing is that the law is on our side now, because in June 2012, the council passed the Complete Streets Ordinance, which basically is equality for walkers, bikers, along with cars. And it says that whenever you build or repave a road, you have to consider the needs of people who want to walk, people who want to bike. So I think those guys who try to sue and stop the city, as far as that law is concerned, they're going to lose. But yeah, I suppose if they bring some environmental or other process issue, then I don't know about that. But still, it depends how fast the public adopts to it, how much support there is out there in the public, and how many people continue to walk, continue to bike. Because people want to do it. I mean, I know people here do it, but you saw 30 to 70-year-olds in Aiea. Many of them don't bike. They want to bike.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. And Mike, how do you balance that legal issue? On the one hand, you're worried about businesses potentially suing, or people or residents upset about the impact a bike lane might have on their road. On the other hand, as Chad says, the law's on. It seems like it's on their side in terms of this complete streets ordinance.
Yes.
Couldn't it just as likely be that a biking group or an environmental group sues the city because they're not, the city isn't incorporating bike lanes into its repaving projects?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, if you look at the Complete Streets Ordinance and the Complete Streets Checklist, which I have a copy, so if any of you want to come up and see what a Complete Streets checklist looks like, it's as Chad described. It basically requires the director of the department. So for DTS projects, if we're doing a Kuakini Street extension, we have to go through a process where we consider bike lanes, bike sharrows. And if we opt out, if we decide not to put one in, we have to explain why. But it doesn't make us put the bike lane in. It just means we have to explain the reason we chose not to put the bike lane in. Maybe the width of the road is too narrow, or whatever the reason is. So I don't think this is going to be the basis for a lawsuit for not conducting an environmental assessment when someone thinks that you've made a significant change to the environment using public taxpayer dollars, which is the trigger, is a real threat. And we don't want to be in that situation. So for King Street, we're planning on doing the cycle track as a pilot project or a demonstration project. And during that year, we'll gather data to decide whether or not we need to do an environmental assessment, which we will do, or an EIS, which we will do if we have to do. In other words, we'll do it. We'll go through the process. But we want to get it on the ground first. So put it on the ground, take away the lane of travel. We did the bike, not the bike study, but we did the study last year that we took away a lane of travel to see the effect that it would have on travel times down King Street. And the result of that study were it had a negligible impact on travel times. And I think most of you know, if you watch traffic, it's only during the PM peak hours that traffic is really heavy on King Street. It tends to be heavier during rainy days or inclement weather, but it's PM peak hours, and still people tend not to travel in the most Malka or the most Mackay Lane. They tend not to. They tend to use the Mackay Lane for turning movements only because the bus uses that lane. And then when you get on the Malka side, when you get down past Punahou, there's parking. We don't even take away parking, so you can't even use the Malka Lane. So we did this study where we took away a lane of travel. We know it had a negligible impact on travel times, which means we now have sort of the green light to do this pilot project, put it on the street, and then we'll study it to see whether or not we have to do a more enduring type of environmental assessment or EIS, which I don't know. Maybe we won't have to do that. I hope that's the case.
Mm-hmm. And so for the complete streets ordinance, what are the rationales that you can say, okay, we're not going to build a bike lane on this road? I mean, are there certain stipulations, or is it wide open that you have total discretion over whether it's a quality of life thing or some other larger issue?
No, it's not completely open discretion. I mean, and that's a good thing. It shouldn't be that way. The goal is to make the streets more complete for everybody, for bicyclists, for pedestrians, for those that are disabled. And I think all the directors understand that that's the goal of this checklist, so nobody's going into it intending to use it in a way that produces slanted results. Nobody wants to do that. But it does give you the discretion at the end of the day to say, I couldn't do it. And there's many reasons, and one has to do with the physical limitations of the street. So you just may not be able to fit a bike lane in. Maybe you have to go with sharrows, or maybe you can't even get sharrows on there. And I think where you get sort of in the gray area is cost. So what if council gave you the budget of $1 million to repave a road, and it takes $995,000 to do it without a bike lane? And now you have to engineer, design, and put in a bike lane, and you don't have the ability to do that financially. Do you repave the road, or do you say we can't repave the road because we couldn't put a bike lane in? That's one of those gray areas, and you hope that the director exercises good discretion in doing that repaving project, but it leaves it up to the director to decide at the end of the day what was the basis for which they chose not to implement. And what it does is it makes this a public record, because this gets filed with the Department of Planning and Permitting, and the public has the right to go in and look at why the director said they did not put a bike lane in. And then you can question. You can say, well, why didn't you put a bike lane in? And if I'm the director making that decision, I'm going to want to make a good decision versus a bad decision because I'm on public record. So I think it's accountability, it's transparency, but at the end of the day, it does give the director discretion.
If I could interject though, I'm looking at what Mike provided. The exceptions is where using it for non-motorized users is illegal. Okay, so freeway is illegal. Okay, here, cost would be excessively disproportionate to the need or probable future use over the long term. So I don't know, the example Mike gave, I don't think could be used in this one because you'd have to show it would be excessively disproportionate to the need. And just, running close to budget would not be excessively disproportionate. Another one is absence of current or future need. It's kind of hard to prove that you won't need something in the future, but so it's a high standard. These are not easy to make exceptions. The whole idea is you're supposed to try to do it in good faith and do everything feasible to get it done. So this is a high standard to not do it. And here, the safety of a pedestrian, bicyclist, or vehicular traffic may be placed at unacceptable risk. Right? So if you make it convenient for biking and walking, then it's going to be more risky for biking and walking, which is a hard standard to reach too if you're really trying. And then if it's only minor maintenance, then yeah, you're not expected to redo the whole street for minor maintenance. So. And then privately owned streets. So this is it's a great law. I know the council voted unanimously, right?
I believe so.
In favor of it. It was pushed by AARP, they really got this going, and we supported it. But ARP has to take credit for this because they're the ones who are seeing the elderly pedestrians get killed at the highest rate in the country. So that's why this law came about, and of course we supported it. But it was mainly for the high level of pedestrian death. So this is going to be a good law for all of us to get to know and to use every time when we push for better walking and biking in Honolulu, in Oahu.
Yeah, so, right now the mayor's obviously repaving hundreds of miles of lanes. Chad, do you feel like enough bike lanes are going in as these road repavement projects are moving forward?
No, but the reason is that when this current administration came in, the design plans for the streets that are being repaved now were already done. And because the mayor had this objective to do 1,500 miles in 5 years, his main objective was to repave. So we asked them to go back and redesign, but they said, no, we're not going to go redesign because we're not going to pave 300 miles if that's the case. But we will commit that designs from now on will look at the bike plan, and if a street that's going to be repaved says something, the bike plan calls for something, then they will have the designers strongly consider it. So for that, we know that what's being designed now will implement this, and there's been exceptions, like on Baratania Street. The design was done before, but to their credit, Mike Formby and Design and Construction were willing to make an exception to put a bike lane there because it's such a major thoroughfare, right? King Street going toward University, Baratania going toward town. They're willing to make an exception and redesign before the repaving occurs.
And so, Mike, other than obviously the King Street protected bike lane is a really big deal for you guys, and it really provides a safe access for bikers all the way from the university all the way to downtown, right? Mm-hmm. What other projects is your department currently looking at in terms of making into bike lanes or even protected bike lanes?
Yeah, so we're identifying other streets that could branch off of King Street, like Pensacola, P.E. Coy, South Street. If you look at South Street, very wide, over capacity. I mean, there's clearly room for a protected bike lane on South Street. Ward, we're going to be working with Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes is doing development on their property on the Mackay end of Ward, and they intend to put in bike lanes. And then we'll meet up with them and take over from Kapi'olani to the King Street cycle track. So we're looking at a bunch of different areas that we can branch out into Waikiki off of the King Street cycle track. But for me, it's also about fairness. And so I don't think it's fair for us to always look and say, well, if we go Diamond Head of downtown, you get really nice cycle tracks and you get a nice network. But if you go Eva of downtown, you get congested streets that are really almost inadequate for cars, much less bikes. I mean, I think we have to tackle the tough ones as well as the easy ones. The easy ones are really Diamond Head of downtown, and we can't just do that. We have to go and look to the people that live Eva of downtown. So the people that live in Kalihi or in Waipahu, or even further, Central Oahu, that want a bike, and give them at least some belief that at some point the city's going to tackle the tougher corridors and make it bike friendly on that side as well. So, it's not always about picking the low-hanging fruit. It's about doing, I think, what's right and what's fair for the biking community. So I've definitely instructed my staff that although right now the focus is King Street and Pensacola and South Street and all these nice wide streets, Diamond Head of downtown, they need to look that way too.
And on that level, Mike mentioned biking community, and I guess who here considers themselves part of the biking community? Okay, it's almost everybody. But to be a part of the biking community really doesn't mean that we're looking out for a small interest group, a minority group. Because if we make our streets safe for pedestrians, which is everybody walks at one point or another, unless they're in a wheelchair, and safe for bikes. What is that doing? That's making it safe for the majority of people to have an option that is not dependent on the car, right? And talking about equality, that means you don't have to spend $5,000 a year, which is the average cost of a car, maintenance, gas. You can save that money and spend $600 a year on an annual bus pass, and maybe $100 or $200 a year on a bike and tires and whatnot. And then we're giving the possibility for the majority of people to get around, keep fit, and have equality of movement. So, let's not see ourselves as a minority group. We're trying to make the community more walkable, bikeable, and by doing that, more livable. And that's the great thing that the people in Europe have discovered, that when they make their communities accessible by walking and biking, and people don't have to be afraid of dying, then hey, isn't that a great place to live? Isn't that a great place for little kids and grandparents and great-grandparents to be able to just enjoy? And we got the best place to live in the world anyway, so if we just get the infrastructure caught up to that, it's not going to beat, nobody's going to beat us for livability.
And to that point, what do you think is really realistic for Oahu? In Europe, like places like Amsterdam and Copenhagen, you have populations where 50% of the people actually bike. I think you were telling me that only 2% of people on Oahu actually depend on bicycling for their primary mode of transportation. Just looking forward, do you think it's realistic for us to ever get up to those numbers that some of these major European cities have achieved, or is it a much more moderate kind of model that we're looking at, like for instance Seattle or maybe New York City?
The United States, we're behind because we were too developed with the cars, right? Earlier you said, how did we get here? Our economy and our hard work produced so many cars so fast and made it affordable, starting with Mr. Ford, so that, of course, people are going to choose the easy thing when it becomes available. And if you go to a developing country now where they have to walk and they have to bike, and you tell them, hey, I can give you a car, or you can earn enough money to buy a car, most people choose that, right? It's just the human condition. We want to do things easier in a way. But now that, so Portland at 6% has the most bike commuters in our country, which if you transfer that to Europe, that would be a backwards European country, right? It would be like Switzerland, which has a lot of hills. So I think it can be done because all we have to do, some of it is the high price of gas in Europe. We're not that high here. The high price of congestion, we're not that congested here. So there's less things that really push us to take up walking and biking. But I really think that it's going to happen because as time goes on, with more congestion, more cost, and more pollution, it's going to become the right thing to do to ride a bike. It's going to be the wrong thing to do to always drive a car. I think people are going to get to the point where they go, okay, I got my car and I need it certain times, but how can I minimize that? How can I do that only when I need to, when I have to carry heavy stuff, when I have to carry a lot of people, and how can I do my bit for myself, my family, and the community by walking or biking more, taking the train or taking the bus. So this is 2014, and I think the mode for biking is gonna, and we're at 2.3%, the 12th most bike commuting city in our country. It's kind of sad that we're 12, and I think in 10 years we should be able to double, and then 10 years after that we should be able to double. So talking 20 years, I think we should be at least 10%, if not more.
And Mike, I mean, in terms of, you've been in the transportation sector for many years. You used to work for the State Department of Transportation. Oahu is ranked as some of the worst traffic in the country. Do you think that a push toward bicycling could actually be one of the solutions to reducing the amount of congestion on the roads?
Yeah, I think
Or do you think there's too much urban sprawl, actually?
well, the first part of your question, I think your phrase was one of the solutions. And absolutely, it's one of the solutions, but it's not the only solution. So we're building transit. We're building transit-oriented communities where people can live, work, and play. So the whole concept is, and to Chad's answer, to me, if I had to put it in a nutshell, it's just generational. There are people with my color hair over 50 that get it. But there are definitely people that are under 50 that absolutely get it. It's generational. If I go to the neighborhood board meeting and I want to talk about change and you ask people to raise their hand, it's generational. So the young generations that come in, they don't necessarily want the house with the 2-car garage out in the suburbs. They want to live in town, they want to ride public transit, they want to ride their bike, they want to walk, they want to live, work, and play, and hopefully when they get older, they want to age in place, which means we build communities where people can actually stay in their home because you can get health care and service providers and everybody to come to you versus you have to go to a nursing home because now that's just how it is in life. The younger generation gets that. And to me, one of the frustrations that I have right now is that with rail being part of the solution, complete streets being part of the solution, biking being part of the solution, transit-oriented communities being part of the solution, you put those all together and it's a complete picture. And it works, and you can see it on the mainland. Go to Vancouver, British Columbia. Walk around and see how they've built communities where people can bike to their jobs, walk to their jobs, take transit to their jobs, live healthy, active lives. It's fantastic. And that's what we're trying to do here, but we're up against a community that really does not want change. And it's the same thing for bikes. There are people out there that don't want change. And so and that's why I say a large part of succeeding in this change is public education, getting people to come to the neighborhood boards and participate, getting the young bicyclists to come to the neighborhood boards and say, we want to see a cycle track on King Street. The neighborhood board that I go to is heavily anti-bikes. If I went in that room and I said tomorrow, I want to ask the board, will you support a cycle track on King Street? I guarantee you I would get a negative vote.
That's which one?
I don't want to say. Because you know already.
I know it. But
And the reason he knows is they just got a Hawaii Bicycling League member on the board. So thank you, Chad, for that. But even that's baby steps. Even getting these neighborhood boards, these community groups to view things differently, it takes time. And when we do TOD symposiums and you look out at the audience, it's 80% gray and white hair, which is not a bad thing, but there's no youth. And those are the people that really have a different vision. You know, we're not supposed to be building for our generation. We're supposed to be building for your generation. So you should be telling us how to build. I shouldn't be telling you how to build. You should be telling us. So, you know, if back to your question about, you know, do I think this can all happen and is it going to happen? Yes, but to you younger people out there, you really have to get involved. You have to make sure people that are making decisions know what you want because it's your generation we're building for. It's not my generation.
That's so interesting that you say that almost the whole neighborhood board is against it. What is it? Is it they're scared of the congestion, or they don't want to share the road with bikers, or?
You know, I really can't explain it, but I can just tell you that at like the last neighborhood board meeting, I listened to the chair of the board talk about how rude bicyclists are, how they ride on the sidewalks and they come right by you. And I know there are people here that have experienced that, so I know that's not something that never happens. It happens. But that's the whole purpose of building cycle tracks and bike lanes, is that if you give the bicyclists a safe place to ride on the street, they won't be riding on the sidewalk. So it's like we have the solution, but they can't get beyond the problem to see the solution. So I think it's just a change thing. Some people have the ability to embrace change, and other people don't. And that's just the way it is.
An example is someone who's a really good guy, but the only way he measures progress is how fast he can get somewhere in a car. And he lives in Mililani. He complains to me that for the last 20 years, every year it takes longer to get from Mililani to Honolulu, where he works. And so the only solution he sees is how can we make the roads wider? How can we somehow lessen congestion so he can get from Mililani to Honolulu faster? And so I just said, hey, have you ever thought about moving from Mililani? Oh no, I would never do that. I said, well, the express bus is pretty good. Maybe you can take a bike, put it on a bus, and then read for half an hour, and then when you get to Honolulu, you'll be ready to just bike short way to your next place. And he just couldn't conceive of that, because his only frame of reference was, how fast can I get from one place to another in my car? That's his only frame of reference. And I think we got to change that frame of reference and say we can find other ways to spend our time by using mass transit, by biking, by walking, which means we're getting to our destination and improving our health, sustaining the environment, and not killing each other by driving. Because you know, the other statistic is that whenever we have economic downturn, people drive less because they get less money. And that's when less people get killed. So all the safety advocates go, oh, it's so good that this year the number of highway deaths has dropped to 30,000. But it's really a function of not driving. So if you can figure out a way to encourage the not driving and take safer modes of transportation, we're going to be better off. What is your question?
Well, I mean, to that point, I mean, I think it brings up an interesting nexus between gas prices and an economy and people, the choices they make. And so in Europe, they actually hike the price of gasoline. They actually put a premium on it, trying to encourage people to find alternate modes of transportation. Do you think that's really a realistic option for a place like Hawaii, where people are so worried about how much gasoline prices are going? I mean, we have a really high cost of living, and so...
I'm just going to answer it this way. The mayor could not get a 5 cents a gallon tax through the council. You're never going to get tax prices raised, gas prices raised to encourage people to bike. Not in my lifetime, I don't think.
But I got to give credit to the mayor for trying, because basically that's what he was saying. You know, because as a whole people are driving less, the DOTs are getting less money to fix the roads. So many DOTs are saying, we're not going to expand roads anymore, we're only going to maintain roads, which is kind of a good thing, right, in terms of the direction that it's going. But there's going to have to be another way to finance the maintenance of the roads. And so whether it's hiking the tax or changing it from a gas tax to a number of miles you use tax, times by the weight of your car tax, it's something has to change. And the good thing for people who bike, walk, use the bus and rail is that that's generally going to be the things that you can save money by avoiding the driving.
And I wanted to make sure that we got to bike sharing, because obviously we have all this momentum going on at the city level in terms of the King Street protected bike lane and the repaving project where they're incorporating more bike lanes. But what is the status of the bike sharing program that's supposed to be coming to Hawaii? And can you guys explain exactly what that is and whether it's really going to have a big impact, if you think, on biking?
Sure. So we do have a bike share program. I think hopefully most of you know about it. It's called Bike Share Hawaii. We being the group that oversees the Bike Share Initiative, we formed a nonprofit called Bike Share Hawaii. And it has really bike share advocates on it. And it has board members. And right now we're out with an executive director job description on the street. So if anybody's interested in applying to be the executive director of Bike Share Hawaii, let me know and I'll send you the job description. But we're looking to get a first-class executive director based on some initial seed money that we got from Ulupono. And we think once we get the executive director into the position, that person will be able to really move things forward, which is to start talking to corporations and foundations about fundraising, because it is a significant expense to build a bike share system, especially one along the lines of what we're talking, which is 1,700 bikes. You're looking at $12 to $14 million to do that. And most of the systems that have been created on the mainland either had funding from grants and did it as a city initiative, or they did it as a public-private partnership. And we chose to do Honolulu's bike share system as a public-private partnership. So we're really looking for the private sector to come in and to help the city and county and the state. And by the way, it's not just a city and county of Honolulu initiative, it's a state of Hawaii initiative as well. So in my departmental budget, this year we have $1 million, and Governor Abercrombie with Mayor Caldwell agreed to commit another $1 million, so we have $2 million committed to bike share. And Ulupono was the early donor. And then we're going to be looking for corporations and foundations that believe in bike share, that believe that it's the first mile, the last mile for transit, which it will be. They'll be at the rail stations. And then it's also a way for people like me. I mean, I think about it all the time. In my office at the Fosse Municipal Building, I have to go over to DOT, or I have to go to another office across town. And believe me, taking my truck and driving across town 2 or 3 miles is just unbearable. I mean, it's just a hassle. I would much rather walk out the door, have a bike share station there, have an annual membership, get on a bike to my meeting, and then bike back. And for those of you that support bike share, I think, let us know. There's a place for your involvement if you want to be a part of it. There's a place for you in the program. The goal is to implement in 2015. That's a pretty aggressive goal. It means we have to come up with a lot of money. And we're currently in the process of drafting a Tiger grant, which is a U.S. Department of Transportation grant. We're hoping to get $5 or $6 million from the U.S. Department of Transportation to get us over that sort of hump. So we'd have like $6 to $7 million to get it going. Because once you get it $6 or $7 million, if you're going to implement, and you can't go 1,700 bikes, you can go 500 bikes, and you can get it started. And then it will grow. And the projections of our consultant, Nelson Nygaard, are that Honolulu will be a profitable bike share system because of our great climate and our tourists. So we think it's going to be a great thing for Honolulu, and if you want to be a part of it and you're interested, please let me know. After the meeting, I'd like to get your information.
There's also, you can mention to your council member to please support bike share, $1 million in the budget. I've met with 8 of them out of 9, and they support bike share, the $1 million. You can make it easier for them to do that vote by just saying, oh, council member, thanks for supporting bike share in the budget that's going to be approved in June. And yeah, the bikes are not cheap. It comes down to not necessarily the bike, but for when you break it down, it comes out to about $5,000 per bike. And that's for the dock and all the things that make it a smart bike so it can't really be stolen. But it's the best technology that's worked all over. How many of you have had the pleasure of using bike share in another city? See, we got a built-in group of people who know that it works. And when Asia Yuri from EPA was starting this idea, is Asia here? Well, Asia got people from government, nonprofits, private sector together. And after about 6 months of meeting, you know, it was kind of amazing. That's when I got the feeling like, wow, bikes are really gonna catch on in this state, because you had all these people saying bike share is a great idea, and including Waikiki Improvement Association. So I think it's going to work. And another thing, I know some of you work downtown and you wish you could bike, but to go to your meeting on a bike, some people are going to look at you like, hey, you're not professional, right? Is that in anybody's mind? Because I know people like that who I say, hey, why don't you bike to the meeting? The other guys would think that I'm not professional. So I think bike share is going to make it possible for that convenient bike to be there and for people to say, hey, isn't it smarter for me to get there faster? Isn't it smarter for me to not clog the streets? I'm being a good citizen by biking. And the other thing is, when we heard that Miami Beach, Florida had a very successful bike share program, and that before the program they had almost 0 bike lanes, that's when the light went off for me to say, wow, bike share does all these great things, and it gets the city and state to realize that we have to be appropriately responding to this demand. We have to put in more bike lanes and make it safe for cyclists.
And can you guys just explain for the people that aren't bike enthusiasts exactly how bike share works? I mean, what is the vision? Is it going to be bike stations at all the transit stops, or is this really a downtown Honolulu initiative? And is it a membership thing where you sign up and for like a yearly due and you can take a bike out? Exactly how does it work?
Yeah, so there's, well, the siting decision is very critical. The systems that have been more successful on the mainland all learned very quick that where you put the bike stations is really the key to everything. So we're not going to be making the siting decisions ourselves. We're going to allow the vendor to do that with us. It'll be a joint. The vendor that eventually gets selected through a competitive process to manufacture the bikes, to produce the bike share stations, will work with us on identifying bike share station locations. But clearly at the transit stations you want bike shares, because you may have heard the concept of first mile, last mile, which means there are many people that get off the train and that's not where they want to be. In fact, there are very few people that live right around the transit stations, but they may only live a mile away or 2 miles away, and if there's a bike share station there, then they have the ability to get where they want to go. But the key is you got to have a bike share station on the other end, because you can't just dump the bike in the bushes. If you do, you're going to get a hefty charge on your credit card. So that's how the system works, is you can have an annual membership. Typically $75 a year will get you the right to use a bike, or you can do hourly. There's many different ways you can do a monthly membership. There's many different ways that we can set up the program, and we're trying to be flexible about how we do that and what rates we charge and how much time you have to get to the next bike share station. Because I'll tell you, when I was in Chicago with the mayor, I rode the bike share around the waterfront, and 15 minutes into the ride, my blood pressure started going up because I was more concerned about where the next bike share station was so that I could get there, dock the bike, and not be charged a fee for being late. And And we don't want to do that to people. You know, you got to give them enough time that if they're going to go somewhere, they're enjoying it. It's not this, you know, where's the bike share station? And there's apps. You pull it up on your phone, and it'll show you where the next bike share station is. So all of those things, we're deliberating on that right now, trying to make decisions, and the vendor will help us do that when we get to that point. We will have an application eventually. But those are all questions that have yet to be decided, and many options.
If I could add to that, a good bike share program makes you have choice. So you can choose to walk someplace, and if it's faster to walk, then you're gonna walk. Or you can choose to bike, and if it's probably as fast or faster to bike than to drive, you're gonna bike. And you might even choose to bike, even if it's gonna take you longer, because there's collateral benefits to biking. But the idea is they're only gonna be a quarter mile apart, right? So forget, you can walk a quarter mile in 5 minutes, and you can bike there in about 2. So if they're that frequently available, it's just going to be one of those things you think, well, should I walk there or catch the bus or catch the rail if it's farther, or bike? And it's just going to be that convenient to figure. We were in Vienna this summer, Patricia and Yamato and myself, and that's the way we treated bike share. Metro or walk or bike. And it came down to what is fastest, what is cheapest, and what is most convenient at the time.
And I wanted to get into one question from one of our readers who had commented on this, one of our biking stories, and I also wanted to make sure that the audience had a chance to ask whatever questions they had. But in terms of the King Street protected bike lane, this reader is worried that when people park, when the cars park on the outside of the lane, that when they open their car doors to get out, that they're going to hit the bikers. Could you explain how that works?
Yeah, so it will be designed with a buffer zone between the parked cars and the cycle track.
Okay.
And that buffer zone will make sure that people can park in the stalls, open their doors, exit the vehicles without being in the cycle track. But I mean, it's also, to the concern, it's really common sense. You can't just get out of the car and then just walk to the curb. You have to get the mindset of, I'm getting out of the car and now there's a cycle track here and I've got to look. Maybe in the beginning if it's one way left, and in the end when it's 2 ways, and we are talking about a 2-way cycle track on King Street, you got to look both ways. And it means changing behaviors for motorists as well. If you're coming out on King Street, you're used to looking only in the direction of the travel. If we put a 2-way cycle track, you've got to look both ways from now on. You got to look for bikes coming from the left and bikes and cars coming from the right. You always have to look for pedestrians. But it is a mindset, and it's the same way when you get out of cars. The cars will be there, but when people get out, they can't just get out of the car and walk to the curb. They have to stop, look, make sure it's clear, and then walk.
In that article, I read, I think Alex Broner and Elliot and Yamato, who represent the BYK project, had really good answers to that. And their website actually illustrates the kind of treatments there could be on King Street to make the cycle track work. So I thought they did a great job of putting best practices from around the world on King Street and illustrating how it could be the BYK project.
Gene, did you want to open it up?
Virginia, you want to take this one?
we'll just take it out of the stand right now. We'll open up for audience questions. So just come up here and, or probably just go off to the side over here maybe, and just come up and ask questions. So. Yes, just ask real quick.
Okay. Yeah, Maren, I'm from Europe, so I'm actually used to cities where, well, the infrastructure is implemented for biking. And one of the things that you've all been talking about is in terms of that you don't only have to change the roads, but you have to change people's mindsets. And I'm from a city where there are a lot of hills, and it's snowy two-thirds of the year, and people, about 50,000 people in my city use their bikes as their primary mode of transportation every single day. And one of the things that led to that is major public campaigns. So are you thinking about that at all, especially you, Mike, in terms of like having actual campaigns to get people biking more?
Yeah, it's what city is she from? Is that your question?
Yeah.
I'm from Oslo.
Oh, great. So the answer is yes. We think education is important, and we're actually designing right now the handout that we'll take around to the neighborhood boards, and that's where we're going to start with the neighborhood boards. You always have to engage the community first. So we're going to start with the neighborhood boards, and then we're probably going to do some PSAs on the television. But clearly we're going to go to community associations and start engaging the public, have some public meetings, which we'll notice in the paper and on the internet on our website, and do our best to get the message out, because it is about changing attitudes. And can I just add to that, come on up, to that end, Chad and the Hawaii Bicycling League, I mean, these guys, you know, they're our biggest advocates for change, and they're always educating the public about doing things differently. What's your membership now, 1,200? 1,400.
1,400, up from 600 a year ago.
So it's amazing what I mean, the power of 1,400 people. And I'll just say this too, by the way, the council passed the bike share resolution 9-0. So I fully expect the funding will come through for bike share. The council understands bike share. But whenever there are biking issues before council, something as simple as you emailing the council or calling a council member or writing a letter or coming down live to testify makes all the difference in the world. There's nothing that a person like me hates more than to go into a hearing before the council and have opposition and no support. So on biking issues, I always ask Chad, can you help me? Can you get supporters out? But you don't have to be a member of HBL to do that. Anybody can come and participate in the process, and please do on biking issues.
I'm Patrick from Kapolei, and I had two questions. More important one is, for the day when we have bike share and rail and bus and all these alternatives, is there going to be a unified payment system to make that simple? And the second question is, what kind of experience is there when, I mean, and going back to the changing attitudes, trying to change attitudes with, for instance, Wailai and the pilot project on King Street, when it's presented as we're doing an experiment, we're going to try this out, how do you actually change people's minds when you go through that process?
Yeah, so let me answer the second question first. I've never had anybody ask me that question before, and I think it's an excellent question. So thank you for asking it, because maybe we ought to rethink about when we go out with this, how we introduce it to the public. But I'm not sure that we would ever go out and say to the public, the general public, that it's a pilot project or a demonstration project, but internally we want to make sure that we can get it on the street in 2014 in a way that we can't be legally challenged. And so I appreciate that question. That's very informative for me. On your first question about a unified payment system, the answer is absolutely yes. We have a group right now. We have a consultant The consultant is from the mainland, CH2M Hill, because no local consultant does electronic fare media, and that's what it's called. And that's where we go from cash and physical manual passes, which many transit riders wear around their neck, and the bus driver looks at it and sees the pass and lets them get on board. It'll be a card, and the card will allow you to ride the bus, and the card will allow you to get on rail. And the plan is for the card to allow you to ride bike share, for the card to allow you to park. You can use that card for many, many, many purposes. And that's called electronic fare media. And so we're going through that process right now. We have a very aggressive time frame. We hope to have our specs done by January of 2015, and we'll put the RFP out on the street, and we'll start acquiring equipment. And when you think about it, we have 525 buses. So the elephant in the room is the bus system. There's only 21 stations. It's easy to put electronic card readers at 21 stations, but to put electronic card readers on 525 buses that are traveling around the island, going through tunnels, back roads, and having those systems read the cards all the time is the challenge. And so we're determined to make it work. We're spending a lot of money to make sure it'll be successful, but that will be the goal.
I just wanted to add that, Patrick, it is a best practice for governments to say it's an experiment demonstration, because you know that it's going to work. And I guess in a rare occasion it doesn't work, but it's easier for the public to accept that if it doesn't work, this is not permanent. We can change it back. So, people like Mia Burke in Portland and other people who have pioneered this area, that's their magic word, experiment.
I was aiming more at the question of how effective is it at changing attitudes when people see what actually happens on the ground, when they're afraid of just change. If you change it, it's going to get worse. Yeah. And then you actually put it on the ground and do attitudes change?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. If I was opposed to it and somebody told me it was a pilot project, I would think, well, if we all complain loud enough, it might go away. So it's a great question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Yamato Milner, and I want to first thank you all for being here, and I want to thank Civil Beat for making this possible, and Mike for being here and candidly speaking with all of us, and I want to thank Chad for all the years of hard work and supporting the BYK resolution that was passed last week unanimously in City Council, which urged the mayor to really consider the BYK vision plan when making King Street cycle track. Some of my comments I would have, and I would like to know your thoughts, is I think one of the big problems with thinking about the limitations of the road and where we can put bicycle facilities is most of the time the most dangerous places for bicyclists is where there is limited space. So if we only put bike facilities where there's ample space, when you come to the point where the road narrows, the bike lane disappears, and now the cyclist is forced to merge with the car, and that's the most dangerous places where the cyclists who, if we want to encourage more people to bike, those narrow bottleneck places are going to be discouraging. And so I think those are the most important places where we would like the city to really think about engineering and making bike facilities. And if you look at like the layout of parks, there's many places where the layout of parks is cut off and bisected by road, so it's not really connected. And another thing I'd like to point out is I would really like the city to start measuring the level of service for bicycling. So if we could do, I know there's a survey, bike user survey that DTS has, so if we could really survey the public and see what is the impression that people have and how do they feel, we'll have actually statistics on how dangerous people might think the streets are and what makes them feel uncomfortable.
Thank you for those comments.
Are you writing all this down?
Of course.
Hi. This is strange for me because I've got horns coming out of my head, and I understand what people are going to say when I tell you I'm a car guy.
That's great.
I don't think that the problem is changing the way people like myself think, because I already think this way. We are all into transportation. We all know to get from point A to point B is the main thing. I'm on Neighborhood Board 18, and I'm here representing myself. And we're going through a phase 3 of the expansion of Salt Lake Boulevard. And in that, we have got several different organizations that have come to us about putting in bike lanes on phase 3. Problem is, phase 1 and phase 2 that it hooks up to didn't or does not have bike lanes on it, so we have to implement that somewhere else down the road. I listened to what you guys were saying today, and I think that some of what I hear is negative. You got to be positive about this. You're changing the way everybody has lived for years, and in order to do that, there's a lot of guys out there like myself that are car people. We're on your side. But when you come back and you start saying, well, we did this and we hear that, and we said that, you know, we've heard enough of that. Get off that horse, quit beating it to death, and get with us and say, you know, we all understand that there's a need for this because it's a short distance solution, and connect with the bus and your rental of bicycles, I think is great. I think it'll work great downtown. I think it'll work great in Waikiki. Once you get out of that zone, though, it changes. You know, you ask people here, you take your car, you take your bike, what do you do when you first get it? You put an alarm on it, you put better tires on it, you put nicer seats on it. It's all part of creature comfort that we do with all of our modes of transportation. And I think you need to look at the car people that are there, and we're not negative about this. We can see that this is the way of the future because of the shortness of fuel and everything else. It's not going to come quickly, but somewhere down the line, you're going to start reducing how many cars are on the road because of things that you're adding to the whole scenario, such as bikes and people walking and rail and buses, everything else. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'll never see it in my lifetime, but somewhere along the line, you may eventually get rid of cars and trucks altogether. But commerce isn't going to allow it because they need to move products around. Very hard to get on a bike and take 20 tons of food with you and ship it over to Safeway. So to get rid of it altogether, probably never going to happen. But there is a need for rail, there is a need for bus, there is a need for bikes, and whatever mode comes along later on in the future that people will say, hey, you know, we can use that now. You know, back 20 years ago, we didn't have these things, and that's what lets us work at home now, these and the internet and everything else. So as progress comes along and business changes and the way of communication changes, it's the same thing with transportation. It's just changing. Neighborhood Board 18 understands what's going on with bikes, and we want to be there to help start making with that change.
Where is that?
Salt Lake, Aliumanu, and Foster Village.
And that's not my board, by the way. Just so you guys know, I was never talking about this gentleman.
No, because our board is on your side.
I know, I know.
You know it's not this board.
I know.
But we do have concerns with Department of Planning and DTS and everything else that we want to get this thing moving because Salt Lake Boulevard is not completed and it needs to get completed.
Yeah, so can I tell you thank you for the comment? I really appreciate it. I would love to work with a person with your attitude. I think it's wonderful. You know, we don't expect everybody to be advocates for complete streets and change at the pace that we're moving, and we need to be respectful of people that oppose us. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter from Manoa. First of all, it's good to see a broad range of ages of people here. I have a few questions. The first one is, I'd like to know what the city and state are doing to improve driver education. in order to protect vulnerable road users. I think educating drivers is a very low-cost solution compared to cycling infrastructure improvements. And also in the more, you mentioned the outlying areas, the more rural areas. The more rural the area, the more expensive it is to implement cycling infrastructure. So that's why I think education of drivers is very important. And also, if we're going to have a bike share program here with foreign users of bicycles who are unfamiliar with road laws in the U.S., it's very important to have very conscientious drivers that are very aware of there may be vulnerable users on the road. And I know of no enforcement of the Hawaii Vulnerable Road Users Law. I don't think there have been any convictions or even prosecutions. And my last point is that in London and Europe, there's a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit initiative, and it's been implemented in London already. And I'd like to know if the city or state is studying reduction of speed limits to 20 miles per hour in Honolulu and Hawaii. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, what are you thinking about some of those? Peter, vulnerable users law is being used. Big Island, Maui. I'm not sure about Honolulu, but the prosecutors are using it. And unfortunately, last week, there was a cyclist killed on Maui when the driver drifted into the bike lane and killed the driver. And we wrote to the Maui police and prosecutor and said, use the vulnerable users law on this one. And they called back and they said, we're aware of the law and we're looking into the facts and we might use it. So for those of you who may not be that familiar, vulnerable users law says if you're a motorist and you violate the law and in that process you kill or seriously injure a pedestrian, cyclist, road worker, officer on the road, anybody who doesn't have metal shell around them and vulnerable, then the penalties are going to be higher and more severe for you, and such as moving from misdemeanor to felony, moving from 5 years to 10 years. And it's meant to be a deterrent. It's meant to emphasize that as a driver, whenever you see somebody walking or biking or working on the road, slow down and be careful because, well, I mean, you might get punished more if you kill that person, but more importantly, that's somebody else who deserves a right to be safe on the road. So that is being used. And we're one of 5 states in the country that have it, so it's really a good thing. Just want to mention before Mike says whatever they're going to about speed, I mean, that's the other big variable, right? You need either space so that people can go past you, or you need slow speed so that they can crawl past you. And the slower that the driver is going, the narrower the road can be. So that's how we can, if we are willing to get somewhere slower and consider the needs of other people on the road, I mean, we could have more bikes right now, but it is a process. It takes enforcement, it takes laws.
Yeah, and I'll try to be really quick on the speed limit. So there's no current effort underway, to my knowledge, to just reduce the speed limits. Right now, 25 is the default miles per hour in the city and county of Honolulu. If it's not posted, if the road has no sign, it's 25 miles per hour. But we're constantly asked by community members, neighborhood boards, council members, people that live residents of streets to reduce the miles per hour on their street because of kids and stuff like that. And we always do studies, and if appropriate, we go and we reduce. And sometimes we get requests to increase the speed. People want to get places faster. So, but there's no general program to change the default speed. And to education, I really wanted to talk about education sort of in the broader sense because we do a lot of educational programs and we do many of them with HBL. But I brought this tonight. This is the biking. This is the kind of stuff that our staff goes out all the time, and we try to get them while they're young. So these are educational programs that we use with elementary school kids, where we give the glasses, and we give the reflection armbands out, and we give the bike lights, we give bike bells. You know, we go out and we meet with them, and there's a ped man, so they dress up like a action hero, and they're actually to talk about the importance of paying attention to pedestrians when you're driving and when you're biking. So we do all of these educational things, but they're all really aimed sort of at two communities, the very young or the very old. And the very old is we go to the senior homes and the caregiver communities, and we try to educate them about how to be safe when they go out, so that they don't get hit by a car in a crosswalk, that they don't assume that just because they're in the crosswalk, they're safe. We all know that's not true. So there is a pretty extensive education program. HDOT, the State Department of Transportation, does most of the serious driver education, and then another department in the city does the motor vehicle licensing department. They do that versus my department.
It's one of, has the driver's manual and driver's test questions been updated to reflect the Hawaii Vulnerable Road Users Law? And when is that going to happen?
Yeah, so I don't know the answer. I don't know if Chad does. I don't know, but I can find out and get back to you. So if you'll give me your contact information later, your email, I'll give you an answer.
No, it hasn't been changed. 3 years ago, we submitted new questions for the test so that it's the state government that's responsible. Could issue a new test so that, you know, one of the questions is going to be, does the bicyclist have the right to use the full lane when the lane is too narrow for a car and bike to ride safely side by side? I mean, to me, that's the main thing that drivers have to know when there's no bike lane. But in its wisdom, the state government has not changed it. So if you want to be on a committee or a group that constantly dogs the DOT about that, I'd like to have your name, because we always ask them, but there's not enough push behind it. We got to make some noise about it. And regarding speed, we got to make some noise about that too. You know, the effective speed going from one end of Honolulu University to downtown is 12.5 miles an hour. So that's what happens when you go stop, go stop. So why should we be opposed to a 20 mile an hour? And especially in our residential areas, why shouldn't we have that kind of thing? Because statistics show that you're going to have less crashes, and even if a car bumps a pedestrian or cyclist, the chances of them living at the speed of that bump is much, much higher.
So I just wanted to add real quickly one thing. Sometimes, it's unfortunate, but sometimes the way you educate people is through operant conditioning. And so we actually sponsored a bill in the House and a bill in the Senate this year to raise the fine for parking on bike lanes. It's a problem throughout the county. You know, there's bike lanes in the coastal communities. People want to bike in those communities, but they can't because people going to the beach park in the bike lane. And then you force the bicyclists out into the road where they compete with cars. So we put forward a bill in the House and a bill in the Senate, and House Bill 1706 is still alive, and it raised the minimum fine from $35 to $200. Because now, and hopefully it comes out and it gets signed by the governor, 200 to 500. But what was happening is that before it said minimum of 35, and the only one that could cite for more than 35 was the judge in the courtroom. And when you get a $35 ticket and you've been at the beach all day, you don't go to court to challenge a $35 ticket. You write a check, you put it in the envelope, and you mail it back. $200 is intended to get people's attention. So they learn when they come back, that was a stiff penalty, I'm not going to do that again. And we're trying to encourage people, educate them about bike lanes. They're not for people to park. So this is currently 1706 is the House bill, if you're interested, House Bill 1706.
My name is Nat, and I commute about an hour and a half round trip from Pololo to Chinatown every day, so I use both Wailai and Baratanian King, so I'm really excited to hear about the protected bike lane on King Street. And I grew up and spent about 20 years in New York biking, and they just in the last 10 years put in a lot of protected bike lanes, and there's been a lot of back and forth with the motorist even parking in the protected bike lanes.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear about the fine. I had two questions related to that. Is there going to be special traffic lights for the bikes on that protected bike lane, as I've seen done in some cities, where like the biker will have a separate green light for turning and going straight, separate from the cars? And the other question was about parking, because not that commonly, but definitely a few times I've been hassled by hotel owners in Waikiki and by cops sometimes about locking to a traffic sign, even though I try to lock to the bike-shaped bike locks, but they're often full, especially in Waikiki. And I've asked the cops in Waikiki, well, where am I supposed to park? They're like, it's not my problem, but it should be, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a business owner in Chinatown, so I'd like to know how I can get one of those in front of my business so I can encourage more people biking there.
Okay, so the last question first, to the parking. If you give me your information, we have a biking coordinator. His name is Chris Sayers. He controls where those get placed. And if he can go do an evaluation and have ample space to put it and still have ADA requirements for the disabled to get by, then perhaps they can put one near your business. So we'll definitely work with you on that. We need more bicycle parking. By the way, for the first time this year, as part of our initiative to change things, we're hoping to put secure bike storage at Civic Center. So it'll be the first opportunity where we have some system for people to come in, park your bike, and know at the end of the day when you come back that your bike is going to be there. So that's one change. But we definitely need more bike storage facilities. And at all the rail stations, by the way, they're going to have bike racks, and hopefully one day they'll transition to secure bike storage at all the rail stations. And as far as traffic lights for the bikes, for the bike lane, when it starts out, it may be, we haven't decided yet whether it's going to start out one way with the flow of traffic, and then we'll add the two-way, because we do have to add traffic lights for the bikes that are coming contra traffic. Otherwise, they would never know because they wouldn't be able to see the light on the other side. So we will have to add traffic lights, and our ability to program those monies, purchase the lights, put them in. We don't want it to hold up the project, so we may go one way to begin with the flow of traffic, and then we may add the second lane and all the traffic lights. But they will be in there when it's two-way.
How's it? Eddie Cox from Makakilo, and I work at the airport. And I've commuted from Makakilo to the airport for about the last 16 years. And I'm actually blessed because I get to travel along the Pearl Harbor bike path for most of that commute. And what I've seen over the years is no change at all in that bike path.
Yeah.
And I've also seen Ewa Beach come and grow. And coming from Makakilo to the airport is the worst traffic.
Yeah.
Also from Mililani, you know, I work with a lot of people, and we all experience the same thing where traffic is just horrendous. And for me and for some other people, it's a great option to ride a bike. Unfortunately, it's very scary to ride a bike. You have to travel on some roadways very close to traffic. And one of the big issues I have with these truckers is spikes sticking out of their wheels this far. And although you don't get that close to a truck, it's just really scary to look at these things right next to you when you're riding, and these spikes are going like that. Because no matter what, you ride a bike, you're going to be right next to the traffic. Bike lanes or not, you are sooner or later going to be right next to one of these trucks with these spikes. And if you hit a pothole or look the wrong way, or if he makes a mistake, you're going to get tangled up. It hasn't happened yet, but it will happen where someone's going to fall into these spikes and get really torn up. I don't know why these truckers put them on. They must feel they're really cool looking or something, but they scare the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I've tried to initiate, I've written every representative in the whole state to try and get some action on it, and it has come up, but it's come and gone. But I don't think it should come and go on. I think these things do not need to be on Oahu roadways. And the other thing is, as far as the bike path goes, you know, the Eva Beach has to Geiger Park and a little bit past there to Westlock Park, or I'm not sure the exact name of it, a bike path that's really nice. And there's about 2 miles that has not been finished.
Yeah,
and the city and county, or whoever it is, for the last 20 years has not finished this section. If this section is finished, you could ride from Eva Beach all the way to the stadium on a bike path and never have to see Farrington Highway. Right now, you have to go along Fort Weaver onto Farrington Highway and deal with traffic and being next to cars and stuff. It seems like a no-brainer, a low-cost thing. The railroad bed is there to get this done and go on.
Yeah. Can I ask you, where do you link up with the Pearl Harbor bike path?
I right at the beginning, right at Waipahu Depot Road.
Okay, all right, good.
And then go from there. And then also where it ends abruptly.
Admiral Boathouse.
At the boathouse.
Yeah.
And then you're forced on to Nimitz, where there are no bike lanes.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bridge constructed right past the main entrance to the Arizona Memorial. Took them 5 years to build this bridge. Plenty of room on the road for a bike lane, marked bike lane. They never put the bike lane in. Why? I don't know, because it's a hazard. Everybody's taking a right, cutting through the shoulder. It's very dangerous. I use multiple lanes. I'm kind of insane, but that's the way I ride. You have to, but there's a lot of cyclists who would feel safer if the bike lane was there and the infrastructure was there, because it definitely takes me as much shorter time actually to ride my bike from Makakilo to the airport than it does to drive.
Yeah.
And these are seems like cost-effective measures, and I know it's not for everybody, but for some people it would really open up the door for riding a bike. And as far as that goes, as finishing the bike path all along the West Coast. Waianae, that whole area over there, that railroad bed is already there. A lot of people are using bikes, but they're riding on a highway that's from the 60s. There's stone shoulders, there's no sidewalks in some of the areas, they're heavy traveled. A lot of people would use a bike. It's all flat, it's a beautiful area, it's the best coast. We got big hotels out there, a lot of tourists. I can't imagine why this hasn't been done before to bring attention to tourism and the beauty of the west side of the island. It just gets ignored, and I just think that it would really create economic potential in that area and open up our state, that whole side for everybody.
Okay, so I appreciate the question. We acknowledge the challenges with the Pearl Harbor bike path and the Leeward bike path that would go all the way around the end of the island. Part of the one of the complicating factors is that it's mixed jurisdiction. So part of it is state and part of it is city, and part of it is actually private. And so, for example, the portion that you were talking about that is currently unimproved, that 2-mile portion, the state currently has a plan, the Leeward bike path project. That's their plan to make improvements there, and then it's improved again, but it is currently chained off where the Westlock Community Association is because it's on private property, and it ends up at the Asing Park. So the city right now is actually taking title to that private property so that we can get the bike path back and join it up with the network.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot of talk, but I'd like to see action.
No, you're right. You're right. So we're trying to take that portion back, which is private, add it. The state's going to fill in the middle, and then the rest of it from Waipahu Depot Road is actually a Navy easement. So we have a 20-year easement. It expires this October 2014. We're working with the Navy to renew it for another 20 years. And we have a lot of plans to make improvements to it. The Department of Facility Maintenance, not my department, improves the bridges, and we know that there's flooding during high tide and all that kind of stuff. We know about that. Council member Breen Haramoto, who lives in the Aya Pearl City region, that's his biggest thing. Pearl Harbor bike path, you got to make improvements, but first we have to get the easement from the Navy, so that going forward 20 years we can do that, and then we have a lot of plans to do it in concert with the transit-oriented development. We're going to be improving that area, so it's a good question and things we're going to work on.
And I got one more thing to add. As traveling along the bike path, there's parking issues. I see the Mac tool guy parking in the middle of the bike path, and he's always there, especially it's an intersection, a blind intersection. There's a lot of other issues with the homeless or other things going on, mopeds traveling back and forth. I never see a cop back there. There's no patrol. There should be somebody somehow patrolling that occasionally, just to keep these things from happening.
Yeah, the best way is call 911 and tell them, because that's the only way they react. You know, if you tell them, then they figure they have to do something. I mean, they want to do something, so just call them.
A lot of them are minor infractions, and I'm kind of embarrassed to call them about a parking situation or
Yeah,
about
but
the minor
then
things.
you got to be the squeaky wheel, otherwise you're not going to get hurt, you know.
Oh, thank you very much.
So just, you know, Eddie was one of 70 people who went out to Eva Elementary about a month ago when the state DOT, which is in charge of that Leeward Bikeway project, had its final hearing to determine whether there's anybody objecting to the extension from Waipahu to Kapolei. And out of the 70 people, there was nobody that objected. So the way is clear for them to spend the money that they have, build Leeward Bikeway Phase 1, and then they also have money for Phase 2 that'll go from Kapolei to Nanakuli. So all we got to do is keep making noise about it, keep speaking up about it, because there's very little barriers to that happening other than constructing it and using it from now on. So it's going to be great.
Hi, I'm Krista from Kamuki, and first of all, I want to say I totally agree with one of the main problems in bike and car relations being a sentiment issue towards bikers, and I've discovered this through numerous situations on the road involving cars, conversations out of the windows. Some of my favorite comments being, "Get off the road, weirdo." Or my personal favorite, "Get a car," which I didn't necessarily appreciate because they're going much faster and you can say, "I don't have the money to get a car." So I do agree that that's one of the main issues, and I have possibly somewhat of a petty, but I don't think so. I think an important question, which is, we've talked a lot about creating bike lanes, about creating new situations for bikes to go both ways. Has there been any thought about painting more of those bikes on the road so that when I'm biking, I can go look and I can take up the whole lane confidently, because I feel as a biker more often than not that I'm in the way. I can't ride, I don't want to ride too, I'm concerned about making relations with the car people too, and I'm glad that he got up to talk as well. And I don't want to be in the way of the cars. I understand that everybody's commuting to work. I'm commuting to work as well. And I don't want to feel like I'm in the way. On the sidewalk, I don't want to hit people. It's too slow for a bike and not always convenient. On the road, I feel like I'm in the way.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for that question. The first thing I'll tell you is about the marking. Not just the bike lane marking, but Sharrow marking. There's a manual that the engineers go by. It's called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD, and it actually specifies the spacing between those symbols. But we have learned in certain communities that the spacing is excessive, and when people, for example, park on a bike lane, where they park, they actually don't see that. And they'll say many times, "We didn't know that it was a bike lane." So we are starting a program now. We're doing it in Lanikai. We've already designed it, and it's in for implementation. The Lanikai Loop has a bike lane, and we're putting more of those symbols down more frequently so that people will have more notice. So we are doing that. I appreciate that. And then I also wanted to say one of the big things we're doing, and we're going to do it this year, and I would do it tomorrow if I could go buy the right paint, we're going to be using green conflict zone paint. So anywhere that a car crosses a bike lane, instead of having a solid lane, you'll have a hatched white line, and then you'll have green paint in the middle with the white bike symbol on top of it. So that will definitely be on the King Street cycle track, but we're going to start doing it like I want to do it at University when you come down from Dole and everybody that's getting on the freeway crosses that bike path. Yeah, it's scary. So it really should be green because that tells the motorists it's a conflict zone with bikers. Under the bridge, right?
I just want to add something for all of us cyclists is train your eye to look and lock in on the license plate of the car that's passing you and either passing you fast, honking, yelling, or whatever, being dangerous to you. Just practice that. I do that all the time so that I get it real quick. I know where to look and my eye is just focused. You remember that number and then you call 911 next time you stop somewhere and tell them this car was dangerous to me. I felt intimidated, I felt scared. And you ask the police to come make a report and ask them to call the driver or visit the driver and tell them the law allows you to be on the road in the middle of that lane. And ask the police officer to call you back and say what happened. That's their protocol. They're required to do that because there was a case where a dangerous driver wasn't stopped and ended up killing somebody, or actually 5 people. So if we train ourselves to do that, I guarantee you HPD will respond positively, and if they don't, that means they don't know what they're doing. And please feel to call me up at Hawaii Bicycling League, and we can report that person. But HPD is our friend, and so we should use them. Yeah.
Thank you. Steve Miller. I want to thank Civil Beat and the city and Hawaii Bicycling League for doing this. I think any kind of dialogue like this is a good thing. Mike, you mentioned something earlier about there was design phases that you're not going to go back and look at. I don't like to spend the same money twice, but I would ask the city to reconsider that, because if you go and pave something and you say, well, we're not going to put in any bike lanes or whatever, it's not going to come back up for another 8 or 10 years, and that's too long. I think it's better to step back and say, well, this is part of the route. We go back and we redesign it. You know, the mayor's spending over $100 million, the last 2 years for paving. I think some of it can be spent updating the design. And also, I hope that green paint you're going to put down is not slippery when wet.
No, it'll be non-skid for sure. But so to your point about not going back and redesigning, the mayor did make a policy call that he did not want to spend taxpayer money to redesign when a roadway had already been designed. And one of the reasons he made that is that my department, which oversees the bike plan, we can go in and put the bike lane on the repaved street after the fact. So it would be nice if at the time you design the bike lane so that when the striping goes in, they put in the bike lane at the same time. But he knew that you could repave the road without the bike lane, and then it would come to us to put it in under the Complete Streets policy. So I agree, it's maybe a longer way of doing it, but at the end of the day, it saves a lot of taxpayer dollars and it saves time, and the mayor made that call. So I appreciate your position.
Good evening. Thanks, Chad. I hope you don't mind first name, Mike and Sophie, for doing this. My name's John Lott. I'm a teacher that commutes every day from Waikiki to Kalihi. I got rid of my car 9 years ago. So I'm also a pedestrian and sometimes commute on foot. So I want to start by saying this is the first time in 18 years I've lived here that I actually feel like the city is actually seriously listening. I wish the state would step up as well. So I'll make a couple of points. From the bike or pedestrian point of view is quite different from a car point of view, behind the wheel, insulated for sound, light, and other shocks. So I suggest that whoever is doing road maintenance be required to ride bikes or walk the streets and see what really needs to be done. I call those micro hazards, potholes, termination craters, I call them. Curb cuts that used to be okay for a bike, and now that they're ADA compliant, they're deadly for a bike. That kind of stuff needs to be rethought and looked at on a global scale, not just neighborhood by neighborhood over 20 years. So that's kind of a complaint I have, that let's do the easy stuff, the small infrastructure first. And I heard that Frank Fossey used to go around and see potholes, and like Kirk did on his first couple of months of office, get out there with the shovel and fix them himself. So we need that. We need somebody we shouldn't have to call a pothole hotline that doesn't get a response, in my experience. There should be somebody from the city that's going around and seeing these things, maybe bus drivers reporting it as they slam into it. And it could get fixed right away, hopefully. But at least a temporary fix. I want to point out that macadam was invented for bicycles, not cars. And this island used to be a lot of bicycles before there was cars. So I'm a car person too. Even though I've sold mine, I love cars and I hate cars. I still get Motor Trend. But we need to, as Frank Smith says, if you know Frank, we need to learn to dance together on the streets. And that's pedestrians, elderly, handicapped, bicycles, and cars, and every other motor vehicle. So the education I see needs to be all the way around for all the users. However, education without enforcement is a waste of time. So the de facto level of following the law, respect for the laws, is based on how scared you are, as you could call it operant conditioning. If you're really worried that you're going to get a $400, $500 ticket, then you probably think twice. But if you know you're not going to really get a big ticket, or you're probably not going to get caught, why change? So people know better. They just figure they'll take the chance. We all operate that way. So I wanted to say one more thing about that, which is in frustration in waiting for the HPD to step up and for the others to step up, I took it upon myself to be a little bit of a vigilante, and I've been wearing a helmet cam, and I have a YouTube channel, and I recommend in the interim, start doing that. You don't have to memorize a license plate, you can pull it off your video. Right, Chad? Okay, that's my comments. Thank you very much for having this event and listening to all of our whining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, but John, when those potholes are there, you got to call them in. And I mean, really, that's the only way that they know. And my experience is they respond. And if they don't respond, then you call up their supervisor.
No. The only reason I'm saying no is that my department doesn't do potholes. But the gentleman that does, Ross Sasamura, we were just at town hall last night up at Mililani Mauka. And maybe if Jay has the pothole hotline number, he can give it to me and I'll tell you. But Ross Sasamura, who's head of Department of Facility Maintenance, who genuinely cares about potholes, if you call that number and it doesn't get filled and then you call him, he will make that pothole get filled. So please I'll get you that number for the pothole hotline. You really got to call him in when you see him. 768-7777. Say it again. 768-7777. Thank you, Justin.
And if you forget, this is a plug for Hawaii Bicycling League, but we have a resources section on our website that said report a road hazard, and it has the numbers for both the state and the city. And seriously, if you don't get satisfaction, please call me or email me, because I mean, they want to do the job, and if we complain, they'll do it.
We're almost done right here. We'll probably just close it out with these two gentlemen right here. I may interrupt one of you just to close it out for the TV for the folks at home on TV. So just you know, I apologize ahead of time. But yeah, we'll just close it out with you two right here.
Hi, Mike and Chad. My name is Maza, and I just had a couple of comments as well, and maybe, you know, hopefully Mike would make note. There are a lot of... Huh? Short. Pardon? Keep it short. Yeah, there are a lot of perhaps something. The comments that I have for the streets is, I think thinking geometric changes, like especially right turns that are really high-speed right turns, that could be worked on. Those things that are easier to implement without a lot of effort would be useful for bikers. And narrower roads are good, and you know they are good to be shared as long as making them friendly, bike friendly, and stuff like that. And then also, you know, I'm a biker. I don't have a car, but I'd like people to go faster where there are facilities that are primarily for faster driving for cars. You know, I mean, not every road is supposed to should be. You know, not highways shouldn't be for bicycles. So, I mean, we'd like to be able to have facilities, but those facilities that are shared should be friendly for bikes. So I mean, that's what, and I want to also encourage everybody to comment on the statewide transportation plan. It is, the comment period is ending May 2nd, so that's another, you know, we'd like to get involved, we'd like to be able to, be agents, and so those are the things, and hopefully, you know, we'll see, I'm encouraged, we'll see a lot of improvements, and, you know, we are moving forward, I suppose.
Thank you for those comments.
Maza is one of the good people at DOT.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, how's it going, Chad? How's it going, Mike? So first of all, just to introduce myself, my name is Alex Brunner. I'm co-coordinator of the BYK project, along with Elliot Van Wee. And since 2011, we've been trying to make it safer, easier, and more enjoyable to walk, bike, and take transit on Beartan and King Street. So we're very excited about the King Street bike lane. I want to thank you, Mike, for your support of this. And I want to thank you for putting up with me throughout all of our meetings and the design process, and say that we're very happy with the kind of facility you've been describing, and we're very excited about the upcoming, you know, detailed design meetings for that that'll be open to the public in the future. And I want to thank Chad for his letter in support of Resolution 1446, which passed City Council. City Council has endorsed the BYK project vision plan. Yeah. So we're hoping to see more of these kinds of improvements on the whole corridor, not just King Street, but also Beartan and Yonge in the future. I do have one question for you, Mike, which is sort of just what is the general time frame that you envision for pushing on from the initial segment on King Street? You know, when can we expect, like, not a date, you know, but when can we expect to connect up to Wailai and to go on to North King and maybe School Street?
Yeah. So that's a really good question, and I don't have an answer. I mean, I wish I did. I'll tell you that, you know, my goal is to do everything as efficiently and quickly as possible. So clearly we want to have the King Street cycle track at least one way in this year, 2014. I think everybody knows it's a challenge when you get down towards University because of the narrowing width of the street, so we're working on that connection. We have a consultant that's going to help us design that and how we'll actually get up to the university. But you know, I can't give you a time frame because there are many factors that end up affecting how quickly we get things done. And one of them, I'll tell you right now, is that if we had to focus our energies anywhere, it's on the intermodal connection with rail, because the first phase opens in 2017, the second phase in 2019, and all of those intermodal connections have to be engineered, implemented. The electronic fare media's got to be done in place so people can have access to go from bus to rail and back to bus, to take their bikes, all of this kind of stuff. So we have to have priorities, and we do, and sometimes it affects how quickly we can get a project done. But the mayor is absolutely pushing my department to do things as quickly as possible. And if he had his way, we would have the two-way cycle track on King Street this year. I don't think it's possible, but that's the mayor's goal. I think we'll have one way this year, and we'll go as quickly and efficiently as possible. And Alex, I do want to thank you for all your help. Alex is a very vocal advocate for the things that he believes in. And he pushed through council a resolution to get a multi-use path across Thomas Square that the administration embraced and is now working on as part of the Thomas Square project. And so there's a lot of good things that are happening, and we're just going to do them as quickly as we can. That's all I can say.
I think that's the end of it. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for showing up. I mean, I can't believe all of you stayed for 2 hours for this. It's great. And you guys lined up. You guys formed an order to queue. It was amazing. I didn't even think about that, so thank you. Most important, we also want to thank our partners on this, the bike shop. We want to thank Mel over there, the general manager. He was very generous. And if you want to, afterwards, if you want to go talk story with him, go ahead. He's got a bunch of checklists there for the different activities, different safety equipment that you need, different safety tips. And also, if you have a commute that's longer than 30 miles for at least like once a week, go talk to him. He might have a little special surprise for you, if you can prove it or whatnot. I also want to thank Fresh Cafe for providing a loft and space, this beautiful garage. It's very spacious. Thank you to Tiffany Tanaka, the owner, too, back there. And I also want to thank Olelo Community Media. You know and love them. They've been right here airing live from 6 to 8. This was live on Channel 54. On Civil Beat, we'll be posting reruns of this. So you can catch it on Olelo on different channels, different times. They do great professional work. I mean, look at all this like equipment that they have here, remote control cameras and everything, And they're HD too. I also want to thank Sophie and Mike and Chad for a great discussion. I mean, this was a... Thank you, Chad. Thank you very much. I mean, this was an incredibly engaging conversation. You guys just ran with it. Mike, I saw you taking notes, so I think a lot of what you guys said is gonna go back to Honolulu Hale, and there might be some considerations made. So, thanks so much again for coming out, and check back to silbeat.com for future events. Thank you very much.